Beaxy Exchange is a safe, easy-to-use, U.S.-compliant exchange.
Because cryptocurrency is such a young industry, there's still a real lack of transparency.
So we are actually using Dragonchain's technology to help solve these transparency issues.
Beaxy partnered with Dragonchain to take advantage of their anti-fraud and transparency systems.
So using Dragonchain's technology, we're actually able to use provably fair tech to verify that our order books and trades and executions are all very transparent to our users. This alone makes Beaxy the only provably fair exchange in the entire world.
I have more than 20 years experience doing large, technically complex projects. One of the things that I was really pleased with in working with Dragonchain is that it allowed us to do the integration with their technology very quickly.
That's what makes Dragonchain and this a perfect partnership.
All right, welcome to the second episode of the World Blockchain Roundtable. A brief description of the show. It was spawned from Blockchain Seattle, where we found a roundtable format was the best way to help people understand all things about the tech. Most of the hosts hopefully will be on regularly, and we basically gather all topics and questions decided on by the community in the cryptocurrency layer at din.social. So if you want to hear a question answered or hear everybody talk about a particular topic, next week go in there and find the post for episode 3 and ask your question, post your topic, or whatever would make sense. Okay, so hosts for today, we have Praveen Rao. Is it Rao? Sorry, I didn't get asked. Okay, didn't get to ask ahead. Managing Director of Blockchain Solutions at IBM. We have Greg Lang from the Open Relay team. We have James Carney, Director of Marketing at Beaxy Exchange. We have Michelle Tsing, the host of Laptop Radio, and Trey Rutledge from the Dragonchain team. There is a chance that Amy Berliner will show up as well. So if she pops up, she's president of Government Blockchain Council California. So that's the whole team, and I guess we'll just come right back with the topics right after this.
What's been said about blockchain is nothing compared to what's being done with it. Right now, companies are collaborating in new ways, even with their competitors. Friction is beginning to fade away, and transparency is there for all to see. Let's bring together the flow of goods, data, and value through a shared truth that turns point to point into many to many, in a network of networks that will transform business, industry, and the world. What will we solve together? Let's find out.
All right, so let's get to the topics. First up, and by the way, you guys just chime in if you want to answer any of these. Okay, question: what are some industries that you think are ripe for blockchain innovation but have not really been exposed to it yet? So this is from Shaden. So who wants to cover this? Who wants to maybe? I'm going to say Trey.
Hold on, man.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Trey.
Trey, if you want to take it, you're welcome to. Oh, you're muted, I think.
Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, cool. I love this question because you don't usually read anything all that awesome in Forbes Contributor Network. Like, it can be spotty, but I saw a really neat article that described blockchain as a foundational technology, right? And what that sort of pans out to mean is, if it hasn't been replaced, or if blockchains haven't replaced some kind of major subsystem in some space and haven't sort of leveraged the universal gains you get from replacing things at the protocol level, like right at the very base of the stack, then it hasn't been done yet, and it's going to be done. Every industry that isn't already integrated with blockchains will be someday. the question is how, and how can we make the most use of what's possible with it.
Good. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, it's certainly a very interesting question. Probably I would say that question is probably can be phrased differently, or maybe the question, that may not be the right question to ask for blockchain. Instead, the right question may be what kind of data is ready for blockchain enablement, right? Because we truly believe at IBM, every industry is prime, ready for blockchain. But certainly there are constraints, right? Because if you look at because blockchain essentially helps you manage information from its inception through the life cycle faster, better, and cheaper, right? And more authenticate. Certainly you deal with two broad kinds of data. You have a master data that enables many of the transactions, and you have actual transactions data. So as you know, blockchain is certainly a technology that also requires a lot of technological infrastructure per se, and certainly there are certain limitations in terms of the transaction volumes it can handle and stuff like that. From the master data perspective, we have, certainly I can talk at length, we have many solutions that we are enabling just about every industry. It's real, it's in production, and we have more than 50 companies from many different industries operating on that blockchain. Certainly want to hear from others, but I'm more than happy to elaborate more. But I think as we go through this, as the transaction speed increases, I only see more and more growth for blockchain to get into every other kinds of use case, right? I think the right way to think about it is think in terms of the data, constituents, and the use cases, as opposed to thinking an industry, right? Certainly industry is very important, but industry itself may not be the limiting factor in realizing the benefits of blockchain. Blockchain is truly a cross-industry solution.
I can see that, sort of like asking what industries are TCP/IP going to disrupt? Everybody uses email.
Right. It's sort of the foundational component of Web 3.0, right? Like going forward, it's the very beginning of a new paradigm for the World Wide Web. And I think, that's going to touch a lot of different things. And it started in finance, for example, but, Vitalik Buterin's often talked about, disrupting Uber, for example. I think ride hailing is a good one. It's definitely ripe for something where you can eliminate that trusted middleman, but, there's that use case, there's healthcare, there's wills and inheritances, since those contracts tend to be, a little sticky, a lot of parties involved, and you need things to automatically execute. But it's definitely a really promising options going forward, I think.
I would add governments. I think, like DMV, registration, those things, even shares, currently they're on Edgar. They're like a ledger leg, and I think, it would be awesome if, the government uses blockchain for certain things like driver licenses, identity, maybe social security, provided that some of the information that are sensitive or not on the blockchain, but other things are. I would like to see a lot more of that. I think education it's blockchain still is not fully implemented. And, I think merchant systems, retail, haven't been on the blockchain, and would love to see more of that.
Yeah. When you have something about the things. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
No, sorry. I would say a lot of it is that, at least in my opinion, it should be considered generically. It should be something that is akin to software. Software took over all industries, and it hasn't gotten everywhere yet, but it's pretty well driven. And yet, the biggest thing about blockchain versus software itself is that if you apply certain incentives, it can pull the adoption itself. I mean, that's how Bitcoin drove adoption by miners, by rewarding miners for doing its bidding, right? And if you were to basically just consider it that way, that what do you need then? You need something that's more capable. You need something that the transaction, I guess the volume or the efficiency of sending a transaction, and that's in the cost and the actual execution, shouldn't really be a factor. Right now, most blockchain platforms, that's the factor. It's like, oh, in what case is it going to be valuable enough for a customer to potentially spend 150 or $200 on a transaction? Signing into my email is not one of them, right? And therefore, therefore you have to consider the other use cases. And I agree with Praveen that use cases are not necessarily even it is or industry doesn't matter. Use cases maybe not be it, but it's mostly the capabilities, because the use cases come out of that. If you can say we can prove something, or we can allow your customer to prove independently that you are following your contract with them, everybody's happy. It's a beautiful thing. And therefore you need to be able to put things that are very potentially worthless on chain. You need the ability to do that at a low cost. And then the other side of it, something I might want to ask Praveen about, is the IBM consortium model versus a hybrid model where and that's an industry specific thing, right? Because IBM will typically go after and try to create a consortium of industry leaders, right? So they can create a standard and so on. So anyway, it's interesting. So
yeah, the other thing that I just wanted to run a quick nod to is that the stuff that hasn't been invented yet that you can't do without blockchain technology. Like, we're sort of staring at the world, in 1996, when people were like, it's going to be like cable but better, talking about the internet. And they had no freaking idea what people were going to invent with it. And that kind of stuff is really going to blow our minds. None of us are going to predict it.
Yeah.
What new industries will blockchain create, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, just to add to that, right? I mean, I remember almost 25 years ago, people were thinking of fault tolerance, especially on critical licensing, right? I mean, if you have an enterprise license, which is consumed by a large number of people, if the licensing server goes down, you essentially would shut down the whole company. So they were already thinking, it's probably the early version of blockchain, where you could split that among multiple servers and then still provide some level of fault tolerance, right?
Right. Yeah, it's true. All right. Go to next topic. All right. So we have from Dragonchain Hodler, question: can you talk about alt tech platforms potentially working together one day to defeat big tech if needed? Seems if alt tech can put aside differences, focus on the tyrant that might be big tech, that a win for any alt tech would help in general. And you could say this, I will say, blockchain world, cryptocurrency world, this would be this would be very welcome, that everything's so tribal and all the projects attack each other for no reason. That I do see this. So who would want to take this on? Big tech. Anybody?
Well, I can start, right? Certainly a radical question, right, to say the least. Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, consumers really care about, who provides the most value and where they provide, and they would align with that, right? At the end of the day, they don't necessarily care, whether it's a alt tech or a big tech. They care about, what's the value? How can you really increase productivity per person, per transaction or per hour, right? Whatever the way it is. Because many times once you enable the alt tech, they would end up being the big tech one day, right? I mean, the very company. So you can kind of argue both sides. I think the way I see it is, it's going to be, the evolution would be similar to we see in the hybrid cloud model today, right? There is not going to be one network or one company that's going to just dominate the world, because it just doesn't work that way. And there is always going to be a solution that is going to essentially cater well, mainly because of their better understanding of the domain or the players or just sheer technology or experience, right? So the technology would be a differentiator, but there is going to be it's similar to the software, right? There's going to be best of breeds. But I think the key focus for whether it's all tech or big tech would be how do you really make them all work together, not be in a silo, and really get into the story that we lived through, the VHS versus Betamax and the network wars, I say, because everybody kind of loses somewhat, right? I mean, once you get into this winner-take-all models, right? But I think, as I see, there would be more interoperability, more demand for interoperability, and essentially, basically, I think it's going to be a better world in terms of the productivity per person that we are going to generate from the technology.
Hey, this is Michelle. And I hate certain big companies like Facebook, and I think a lot about decentralization and what it means and what it means to the future, the generations who live on Earth. And I also advise a company prior that wanted to compete with Facebook and other companies. And I also think about open source and DeFi and how it's disrupting the banks and allowing peer-to-peer transaction, such as lending, borrowing, and allowing people to generate wealth for generations to come. And I think that has been super disruptive, and we have just gotten started. So for companies like Apple and Google and Facebook, and companies that are from Web 1 or Web 2, I think we are disrupting it. I think a lot of these companies who have DeFi or even Clubhouse and Substack, they do incentivize users for their contribution of data. And I think Facebook is really easy, right? Because it's just messaging. And I think, if the world and planet really want to take on the big tech, we just have to do it together. We just need to plan a great migration to another platform that is not created by, an animal farm type of, style of governance, right? We just really need to move into a DAO or some kind of governance system where we can collaborate better, and who is governed better. And in short, those are my thoughts. I know that I touched on a few blockchain concepts in a few sentences, but I think we're gonna get there.
Yeah. If I can read something into that, I do think that it is less so a big company versus small company question. I think this is, and it might be a rarity in our culture that a lot of people who don't typically care about the big tech and the little tech and startups or any of that, they're just normal people, have been banned in places for mentioning certain names. And that's I think what that question relates to, that censorship generally is, this tech itself was born out of liberty. It's software combined with liberty. That's what this tech is at its base, and or why it was created. And it's an interesting thing because when you look at what they would say big tech, and that would be anybody that might censor stuff. You look at Google search results, and they aren't purely organic in the way that they are being framed. That they block certain things, they do certain things, they have nation state influence that's not even U.S. nation state influence, which is even odder. Right. And you have a lot of things that aren't quite right, and people get it. And that's kind of the beauty of the internet, that is panning out quite a bit, where new industries created, new things happen, but it's really about that. And it's about better governance. It's about not having some kid in Northern California tell me I can't mention a president's name or something, right? It's
Right.
kind of yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and the thing for me that just drives me nuts about this is like, there's definitely room in this space for every kind of innovation. There's going to be, a need for, sort of cartelized type systems that work with existing conglomerations of industries and sectors like shipping, where they're just these weird players that are kind of ensconced in the way they are and they don't really talk to each other, and blockchain can solve that. But I do think there's a fundamental selling short of the average human being right now, that we're too cynical about the way people are. I really do believe that people will sacrifice usability for control over their data these days. I mean, you've seen it with like, who would have ever thought privacy would be a successful marketing campaign? And yet the best marketing tech company on the planet is successfully hammering it home. Like, people love those Apple privacy ads, even if they're not really doing it, they're at least selling it. And, we have an opportunity to step into this system and say, look, there's a hole in the heart of the internet. And this system that we're building isn't a system to replace or disrupt any one of these guys. It's to patch that critical flaw that let this decentralized thing, that was really a liberation of the individual human voice, like, become centralized and controlled by people who didn't quite realize what they had until people started coming at them with bribes and threats. And they weren't even prepared for it. But had this been in place in 1996, had we started working on this back then, had we been able to, none of that would have ever happened. This is fixing the internet. That's to me what this is all about.
Another item is incentivization, right? How we can participate in governance with tokens, and how that is distributed to the community, whether it's governomics or tokenomics. And I'm just thinking about the beginning of the internet, where we have decided that the internet is free. However, we're going to send cookies, and we're going to follow you around, and we're going to learn about you, and then we're going to feed ads to you. And I hope that the decentralized ecosystem, when it expands and become bigger, will be conscious, of that, as well as identity and privacy. I've seen, as an attorney, in one of the first think tank on privacy, I was with eBay, working with Scott on a lot of the privacy items, back in the day, at the beginning of the internet, and seeing how it has changed. In California, we have passed the California Privacy Protection Act, and they are creating a privacy agency. So I think privacy has gone a long way, and I'm really excited to see that we're more privacy conscious. I think there's still a lot of items to square away on the blockchain, such as whether we have a right to be anonymous when we pay for things, like with cash, versus being tracked and having our identity, whether we need identity in DeFi and other spaces, and whether mixers and things are going to continue to be illegal. I think we still need to work through a few items with the government, but involving the government, and I'm hoping to see a more, I guess, equitable world in terms of token distribution, as well as identity, security, and privacy.
Yeah, and there will always be the fights. There's going to be competition, which is good, and it won't be a winner take all, but there will be fights. I just prefer they would occur against actual competitors and not just between generic blockchains. Anyway, next question from TikTok: what explanation or examples of blockchain implementation or tech has the best success when explaining to a blockchain or crypto skeptic? So who has thoughts on that, or experience in crossing that bridge with somebody that doesn't get it?
Yeah, I can go. Joe, I think, this is a real question, and we run into this situation all the time, right? Because when you talk to many people, blockchain is still an apple in the sky, right? I mean, it's still like futuristic technology, not baked and all. I think the best way to implement blockchain, in my opinion, is implement it in such a way that you don't see a blockchain, right? It's because there is a fear of blockchain per se, and that's kind of what we have done, in IBM. If you look at many of our blockchain technology, because blockchain to me has several other components to it. There is a platform that powers it, and platform oftentimes is built on, either a open, sourced. We use Hyperledger Fabric or some technology that's powering that. Then you have a platform, right? In our case, it's IBM blockchain platform. And then you have applications sit on top of that, right? They themselves won't add value because they're point. That's where we need to build an ecosystem, like this kind of the network who uses that. And then we wrap the services around it. But we design the application in such a way that, that is what is exposed to the end users. All the data storage and platform underneath that is kind of invisible, right? It works the same way, it feels the same way as any other application. So it is it is just like any other application. One of the latest solutions we have rolled out is called Trust Your Supplier, right? So essentially we have more than 40, and this is catered to a procurement organization, one of the harder organization. Oftentimes, if you look at it, almost 80% of the revenue comes through procurement, or the cost, right, comes through procurement, because you buy something, you change something to it, and you sell, and then you make profits, right? So essentially, procurement organization is one of the harder organizations to get into to implement newer technology, because if you affect procurement, you're affecting the bottom line of the company. But we have successfully rolled out a solution called Trust Your Supplier. If you look at that, you don't have to worry about what nodes you need. You don't have to worry about what consensus algorithms you need. You just basically go in and start using it just like you use any other application. UI feels the same way as any other application. Your experience is the same. So that way you kind of demystify blockchain and make it, essentially enable it to the business users per se.
Yeah, there's one way, Praveen, I think definitely, of having people not even realize, what's under the hood and sort of just slowly massaging it into their already pre-existing workflow. I think another instructive example is sort of the rise of NFTs in this context, because you'll see a lot of folks who are completely new to anything crypto being converted by the notion of being able to have like high fashion luxury apparel that they can prove beyond a doubt, is the authentic real thing and belongs to them. So brands like Louis Vuitton, Mark Cuban getting into selling Mavs gear, via NFTs, things like that. I think that that helps to people to wrap their mind around blockchain, and getting back to the, what that question was. So things like that can help convince skeptics, just fringe use cases like that.
Hey, yeah. I was about to say NFTs as well. So I'm Michelle. I am a NFT artist as well. Hey. So I've been in the NFT community on Clubhouse a lot, talking to different people in the community, everything from musicians to different kinds of artists, and it's been a lot of fun. And I think being in the community, and also giving DeFi sessions with Standard DeFi. For the last couple of weeks as well. I think, I've heard a lot of people who are very skeptical about blockchain, Bitcoin, but actually seeing the community and being in the field, seeing how people sign up for a MetaMask account and then minting their first NFT on OpenSea or some other platform, and actually moving platform. I was just on Tesla's, and then Trey was telling me about your NFT platform. It's just been amazing, right? Because I've seen skeptics of blockchain, talking about there might be scams, but yet I also seen a lot of people who learn about, like, one of my theses is that NFT, becomes a gateway to other products in blockchain, such as DeFi and DAOs, and that was true, right? One of my friends is an influencer on Clubhouse, and he was doing a lot of NFTs, and all of a sudden, a week later, he was talking about DAOs. Oh, Michelle, we're going to be doing a social token DAO, for musicians, right? And then just a couple days ago, I came into his room and he was just like, "Oh, Michelle, I'm a baby DJ now on DeFi." And it's like super awesome that when people use the product and they start investing and staking in DeFi or farming, they know how it works, then they become like, influencers, right? Or telling more people about this space. And that's how it works with, even Tesla's NFTs and Matic NFT. It was really driven by the community. One person used it, they love it, and they onboard all of us, right? So I was onboarded on Tesla's blockchain because some friends are helping us. We have to go to GitHub and, fill out forms and contact different people because we're still on the early stage. But because it works, it causes adoption and the community really tell other people. So I think that is really important.
So, hey, Michelle, I just connected your work to your name, and I just had to tell you that I'm a fan. Like, you make cool stuff. So I just hadn't made the connection quite yet in my head.
Yeah, sorry. I'm like, I just checked out my hotel, and I'm sitting here, and the view on back of me is like super nice with the river here. And since this is, a blockchain, and we're about autonomous, being autonomous is fine and privacy, and it's not intended, right? It's just the lighting. But I thought it was kind of cool because I've seen Pool, which is a deep, a governance project, and their whole team is autonomous. So I thought it's kind of like, even though I'm a little bit darker, I'm still cool because this is in the blockchain space. So.
I was going to say you mentioned NFTs, you mentioned a bunch of things that in particular show normies, people coming into crypto, and the thing is, those patterns are sometimes not being projected that way. How do I say this? That what we've tried to do at Dragonchain as often as possible is make the actual application, the product, work in a way that a normal person would say, okay, I will use this product to do this thing, right? And it might be a new thing. It might be something that is not possible, or maybe is not, in fact, in a way, is not possible without blockchain. Like, there's some things with authentication that we're doing on a few apps that you wouldn't even know that you're being authenticated, because there's a decentralized identity system behind the scenes that over time builds, it lets you build your own identity, right? And so it's an amazing thing because even when we talk to our customers about it, they can't get out of the frame of mind, okay, the user has to register, they have to verify their email or phone number, they have to come in and log in with a user password, they have to have a reset password, all these things. That's just cooked into everything. And it's really hard to get them out of the mindset to say, well, if we do this, then you don't have to hold their identity pieces, yet you can still have independent evidence or proof that they are of age and they are in whatever countries you want, and so on and so on. And their first name, right? In ways to prove that they're a human, right? And instead of something else. And so that, and you think about it, identity is probably the hardest one, yet we think that it's radically improved, simpler to the user, much more secure than anything that is being used or offered out there, and that's blockchain. And when you get into even the money side of things, that we tend to tell our customers to let people be normal first, let them try the system out, let them like it, let them realize, oh my gosh, I have $80 worth of tokens here, right? And at some point, depending upon the person, where they live in the world, what they're wanting to do, that $80 or that $300 or that $10,000 is what clicks and says, holy crap, I don't care how painful it is. I'm going to go buy a hardware wallet. I'm going to do these things that are best practices security, which are also improving too. But that's when you get people in and when they're fully adopted, because then they say, okay, right, it's obvious to me now why there's so much, so much about this out there and so much excitement, so.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
go ahead.
no, I mean, I totally agree with you, Joe. I think, at the end of the day, it's all about, building better transparency. So there is better trust. Wherever there is better trust, then there is better commerce, right? That's kind of the story or the theme with the blockchain, right? That's kind of where the trusted networks come into play as well, right? You talked about identity. Some of the things that we are doing is it's not just bouncing your data against one identity criteria. We also let number of data providers contribute their information about you in the network. So that way, in procurement or any other situations which involves a multi-party conversations, you're essentially looking at the data in the context of the data that is available with external trust anchors, right? It could be a verifier, validators, stuff like that, right? So that way you have a much better storyline, and you look at things in a trust context.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I will say, if to flip that, to ask you what you think about this, what everybody thinks about this. The issue with that is that feels to me like what they already do to me. Like if I go and I apply for a loan, I have people chiming in about people who aren't me saying they are, that affect my ability to get a loan, right? And that's because they're storing info about me. They're doing things without my permission. I don't have any, I don't get a piece of it. They're making money off my info, and I don't get a piece of it. That's what we're trying to flip, though, is that, and I think it's what this world is trying to flip, is to say, let the user hold it. It's a win for the business because the business doesn't have the liability of all, and in fact, it should be a much higher liability than it has been when these companies get hacked, right? Because that's my info I never made any money on, that now I'm going to get screwed even worse, because now they're going to go and they're going to use that same system in a way far better than I know how to hack in, to basically hack the system and use my name to get some fake loan or use it to do some other thing, right? And so you're talking about all that crap going on, and what we're wanting to do is to flip it, which is a win for the business, and it is a win for the consumer, definitely, because now I have control. I can see when someone accesses any information that I have granted, like say the hospital, to hold certain types of my medical data. Sure, you can hold it, but we want to wrap it so I can see when it's accessed.
No, I agree with you that.
One of I'm sure IBM's customers. I'm sure you have systems in the credit bureaus. Those should be totally disincentivized to move away. And yeah, I understand they will be there for as long as possible, but that is the stuff that data should expire.
But here is the thing, right? I agree with you that users should have control over their data and certainly have some visibility, or most of the visibility around what is being shared. But when it comes to the evaluation criteria, can you really trust the data that user provides, right? Because if I come in and say, Joe, how up to date have you been in credit card payments for last 5 years?
Contract. No, but that's a different contract. That would be if I sign a credit card. Yeah, that's the thing. If I sign an agreement, they should be able to independently prove
that is where the trust.
Because the problem I think is not with people trying to cheat, or I don't want you to see if I haven't paid a bill. What I want is that John Roberts, not John Rhodes, that John Roberts doesn't affect my ability to do that stuff.
Right. But Experian didn't just get magically uncompromised when they settled the class action suit, right? All that data is fucking out there, right? There is no trustworthy data. The institutions and the individuals who don't have any clue how their information's handled, right?
I think the difference is if you have more than one data point, right? That's where you want to get a kind of a consolidated story. You don't rely on one particular.
Yes, but that's the point of it, that it should be verified to have been authorized by the consumer. Right now, and it's understandable what they set up 80 years ago or 100 years ago when they built this system that we have now. But that's the problem. We have the tech now for me to say, yes, this is me. I am opening this account. If I end up not paying the bills, they actually have proof that I agreed to it in the beginning, and they can offer that proof and monetize it however they would want, right? That would be something that would be, and it's doable today. They have the budget to do it. a group like we could get the people on this call and we could build a system that would do that and have it in production in 3 to 6 months. So but the problem is there's a lot of money.
But there's like this decentralized angle too, right? This is why this matters. Like, this is why you will need something like Ethereum that's open source, decentralized, completely outside the ambit of institutional control, because it provides this verifiable record. Right, even private chains that are consortium controlled or whatever, right, are going to commit back to that level, because if you have this trustworthy public data layer that the parts that aren't decentralized perfectly are at least open source, it gives people who have a desire to learn how to do this and learn how to understand it a way to. And before, in most of our systems, like finance is a great example. How does the Fed work? You could ask anybody. Most people don't know because it's a nightmare of a rat's nest to unravel. Like, I don't understand it, and I'm trying. But if people have the means and the technology is transparent and we are good teachers, I think people want that responsibility. I think we were selling users short by suggesting that they don't want to adopt something that's harder.
I think it's a little bit. I think with the DeFi products, you can collateralize things, right? So it could be trustless, and I think it is in some way trustless right now. I think the problem with centralized system is, for example, someone was just copying me on Facebook Messenger. And one of my friends reported to Facebook, and Facebook said that, it was not a duplicate, it was not an impersonator, right? So, and I couldn't report it, so there's really nothing for me to do about it. So that means that people could copy my identity, my data, my photos from Instagram, and try to be me, and they could still pass in a very centralized way. My vision for the blockchain space is, have a protocol, have privacy and identity and security on it, and allow doors to be open and closed, right? Joe, if I go to a club yesterday, and, if they just need to know my birthday, I can just kind of show that without showing everything. And that should happen on the internet as well. The protocols allow us to do that. It could go across different platforms, right? So if I have certain, LinkedIn recommendations, and if I go to apply for a job on another protocol, I should be able to bring in that and open those doors so that the potential collaborators could see that. If I have ratings on eBay, for example, because people trust me to buy stuff, then I should also bring those as well, right? And if there's some kind of identity about me, I should be able to open doors and close doors on certain pieces of data and be able to prove that. So I'm just hoping that we can move toward a system of identity that is really different from today. Not just in terms of KYC, right? Because that still needs to be improved, but also to deter synthetic identities. Whether we combine AI and blockchain or whatnot. I actually have a dream about this, and I can talk forever about identity. I also mentor an identity project, but I think that we're still a little bit long way to go in solving the identity challenge in the blockchain space.
We're there today. Dragonchain. Shameless plug. No, but it hybrids the reason, because anything we're talking about, IBM customers might worry about things like exposure, right? And that's why you have to have hybrid. That's why you have private, but we think that just like Greg mentioned, you have to have the public open ledger that we plug into in the very least, and we combine them. So our take is that I don't even trust Ethereum long run. I don't trust Bitcoin long run. I think they're amazing, but you need them both in case one of them has some unknown, fatal flaw that, we still are going to need to roll back proof to one of the other chains. It could be Ethereum Classic. Maybe Ethereum Classic survives and Bitcoin and Ethereum have some, fatal flaw that, maybe it's cultural, who knows? Anyway, next question. I'll try to run a little faster too, right? What we have 45 minutes approximate. Blockchain-based platforms like Den, like Library, CEO was on last week, provide a free speech platform without centralized censorship, some degree, some manner of decentralized governance, unlike Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and others. And by the way, Praveen, I think those are the big tech they're talking about that are, it's like they're kind of scary to everybody and doing things that nation states would typically do. It's like you are banned, right? Do you think governments will fight against blockchain-based platforms? And if so, what steps are you willing to take to maintain these free speech platforms? So what do you guys think?
Well, I think it's a huge problem, right? We don't know what they're going to do when all of a sudden, like I remember a few years ago, there was a guy who posted something on Twitter. It was like, I really need to be connected to the CEO of Bitcoin because I need to talk to him. And everybody's like, okay, welcome to the community, right? Like that's not how this works. Neat. Everybody's nice about it, right? They weren't ribbing them too hard or anything. But that is something that will become a salient issue when they go to do things like back alley nudge Facebook to say like, we don't want this kind of speech on your platform, and if you don't do something about it, then you will be surprised how many grassroots movements materialize with the money that our powerful friends have to make you stop letting these people talk. Right? I mean, we saw Parler literally go down because AWS, Rivet's an infrastructure company. That hurt my heart to see that happen, right? They literally, threatened Amazon, and AWS pulled them down. Like that shouldn't be able to happen. It's a moral hazard. How to solve it? It's going to be an escalating arms race, kind of, I think.
Yeah. Namecoin should have survived, right? I mean, Namecoin was part of that. I know. If you remember Infinity Chain, it went down so hard that I'm surprised that there still isn't a press about it. No matter what they're talking about, no matter what it is, it wasn't even illegal stuff. It was very weak. I mean, it was a DNS tape. They basically, you just can't have that site anymore. Is what it was. It was kind of crazy, and all of that stuff together is kind of interesting. And you could look at Library. Why are they going after Library? I mean, I think, and you might like some of the other decentralized video platforms better. I like Library. I think they have a funny Twitter account, and talked to their CEO a couple times. He's a great guy. They're really building something, right? They're really trying to build something that you would expect that if this were the late 90s, they would just be, they're one of the, .com companies. It's a cool thing, check it out. There's, a lot of money that's going to be generated. For some reason, they're going after them hard and heavy. And I'm like, I surprised me, It's like they go after them hard and heavy before they go after BitConnect.
Right. Well, they use a federated model too. I mean, the government has a long history of not liking federated models because federated models make it so that you pick your content filters instead of somebody in a position of power.
I have a couple of thoughts on this, right? It's certainly a very interesting question. It touches on many of the fundamental or philosophical debates too, right? Should any right be absolute, right? In a sovereign nation, right? So that is debatable. But I think if the question is around how should be regulated, if should be regulated, at least I can talk about what we do in some of our solutions, right? Because there's a real problem. Anytime you have a network, you need some kind of monitoring per se, right? Because that's kind of where, as a technology company, we don't control that. So we essentially, for every solutions we are, including trust your supplier, we have a governance board that is kind of essentially that represents one or two players from each of the industry. So they meet every quarter and then they evaluate basically the operating rules, the new entrants. And it's almost like the survivor thing, right? Should somebody be kicked out of the island or should somebody be allowed to get into the island, right? Depending on their behavior and some of the things that they do and don't do, right? So as I see in the future, many blockchain networks would operate with an independent governance board, right? It may not be one company, it's several companies. But should government be involved? But at certain points, certainly we all need to adhere to certain governance, data privacy rules, and some of those, especially in some Indias, they look at some networks as an intermediary. That means you essentially communicate what is set. It's almost like a utility basis. That means you can't quite add on to it, make the content your own, right? There are rules that govern, but I think as I see in the future, it would be by a governance board, which would be nominated by independent corporations. May not be, I don't know. I mean, we need some kind of governance in there, right? It can't be open for all, but then you would end up with many other kinds of problems.
I think governments will always fight against it as long as they think it's a winnable fight. But as soon as they realize it's not a winnable fight, then they tend to just adapt and try to, become a power player amongst everybody else, right? So if you can't stop Bitcoin, just start accumulating Bitcoin as a strategic national reserve in case you need to, exert some sway on the global price or something like that, right? So I think if we can get ultimately a free speech platform that's beyond censorship, governments are going to have to deal with it, right? But until then, you're going to see a lot of fighting against it.
Well, and yet #cancel Galileo would have been a thing if we were living in that scientific environment in astronomy, and politics are what they are right now.
This is true.
Do we want to work, how do we address that moral hazard? Because some of the most important advancements in society are made by dissidents. Yeah. How do we make sure that those people are safe?
Usually that's an historical reference, like that, people need to know history. People need to understand, they need to be taking civics in high school and they're not, right? That's some of the problem. Because you could answer any of these things philosophically. It's pretty obvious. It's like, well, long run, guess what? This is going to win. I don't know if it's going to be Bitcoin. I don't know if it's going to be Ethereum, but this technology is going to win one way or another. And so sure. everything to everybody on screen today is it's about positioning, your resources for that win, right? It's not going to be 100 years from now. It's going to be much sooner than that, but it still seems like it's going to be forever. So anyway, well, I guess next subject. Actually, you know what? I just realized time. Sorry. Let's just close out. So, does anyone have anything they want to cover?
We should just let Trey answer the whole last question, and everybody else.
There you go.
Trey.
There you go. Let's do it. Trey. All right. So, regarding privacy, we now have the tech to maintain one's privacy with encryption and blockchain, but governments have fought and will fight against these measures to keep people from remaining anonymous, particularly in certain situations, right? Do you think this will become a difficult fight for social media platforms like Den and Library to offer people who are privacy focused and have a need to express themselves some level of anonymity? I am. So what do you think, Trey?
Well, I think they'll continue to fight it, but I think, just like the way that you've handled it with Den, with our self-governance, I think there's ways that you mitigate and navigate your way through.
Yeah, I mean, it is really much, very much a thing. We're pragmatic. We know, there are going to be rules everywhere of some type, but what you want to do is make it so that, primarily, like say, I can speak for Den. It is about making a more efficient system, more, in my opinion, than it is about free speech specifically. Free speech is a huge part of it. If you don't have free speech, then you can't actually have a more efficient system, right? So, and that's our whole point. And I think with blockchain itself, marketplaces are the way. It's not machine learning. It's not AI. It literally is marketplaces, because not only do you find the avenues you wouldn't find otherwise, and it can compete against machine learning and AI, it's people driven, and you have so much more energy in a person, even if you have the efficiency of machine learning, that people will find the shortest path between A and Z much more efficiently than a well-trained algorithm, because you have to train it for a different thing every time. So anyway, So does anyone have anything they want to close out with? Anything to plug? Anything coming up in your projects at all?
We're probably going to do some. Sorry, go ahead.
Since I have a radio show, so my show is Laptop Radio on Stanford, 2 to 4 p.m. PST. And you can look at it on Linktree/Laptop Radio. I do a show on cryptocurrency every Wednesday.
Cool. Greg.
We will have a promo code for the Shitcoin conference going out on our Twitter account. So like anybody who wants to get some free requests to interact with the Ethereum blockchain or the Ethereum Classic blockchain or any of the test nets, we're working on expanding that. So get the code anyway, set up an account if we're not supporting your platform yet. But you'll be able to pick up, 5 million free requests or something like that. We haven't figured it out exactly, but that's going to be out there so that folks building over there can get some easy infrastructure access.
Excellent.
And I'll just round it off with you get a 30% referral link if you refer people to trade on the only provably fair exchange in the cryptocurrency, US-based cryptocurrency industry on Beaxy Exchange. So be sure to check that out if you want to see what it looks like. We're kind of ahead of the curve with implementing Dragonchain's provably fair system. You can verify the level 2 order book data when you can't on a lot of other exchanges, and it prevents some front-running market manipulation and things like that. So there's my plug.
Yeah, I would just add, if anybody wants to experience enterprise blockchain, you can certainly go to ibm.com/blockchain. You can download a version, or you can create your own network and you can role play. Also, you can go to trustyyoursupplier.com and you can see the solution. There's a bunch of videos and the participants. There is a lot of information for you to kind of learn about what blockchain is doing in the enterprise space.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I'm going to say, anybody watching, if you want a topic or question covered next week, go into den.social, find the cryptocurrency layer. There will be a post in there. It'll be boosted talking about asking questions for episode 3 of the World Blockchain Roundtable. So, ask questions in there, get people to vote it up so that it moves up in the list so we can get to it. And thanks a bunch to everybody for coming on. It's still kind of loose and a little clunky because this is still episode 2. So we're still trying to get used to, moving between people. So hopefully everybody had fun. Hopefully it was valuable. But thanks for coming on, even if it wasn't.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. A tactical approach is palpable if this animal is fallible, but that conclusion is laughable. So with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.